Microsoft, and Weaviate as well, which is an open source tool for supporting vector search and hybrid search. Our goal is to build commercially viable products, and we're going to do so by building in an engineering notebook that helps us capture a better understanding of how we're thinking. The idea behind coding today, now that we've moved away from this world of, it's a little dark, it is a little dark. Can everyone see that for the most part? Yeah. Okay.
Zoom in, yeah.
Cool. The whole idea of like where we are today with the tools that we have in code generation and AI review makes it possible to not know how to code, but still be able to produce code. And what that abstraction comes from, or brings us to, is this idea of being able to think more clearly and concisely communicate the ideas to the language models. So before I show you what that's about, I want to just make sure everyone's on the Wi-Fi. So I'll leave this up for just a second. And you guys can all take photos. But more critically, I want everyone to come onto this platform for today's Hack Day. It's the platform that's going to help us track and, one, help us figure out who's working on what project. Two, figure out how we can distribute prizes. All the prize distributions go right through Hacker Squad. We have somewhere between $500 and $1,000 in cash prizes, which will be emailed to you at the end of tomorrow, basically. And some of them will be emailed to you today. There's going to be some raffles that will trigger out throughout the day as well. Go to Hacker Squad, and you're going to be presented with a site that looks like this: Code, Collaborate, Conquer. I've been working on this as like my side project that I've been building in evenings and weekends. It tracks all of the projects that I run across the US, and even some in Europe. So this was done at the AWS Loft. We did a AI Hack Day with Friendly, Goodfin, CodeRabbit, CrewAI, a bunch of these other AI companies, ScaleKit, Arcade, and Weaviate's here too. We do demo nights at Cloudflare, Hack Nights in Vegas, and at the GitHub office in San Francisco. But for today, we're going to be using this event, building a $100 million solopreneur business with MSR and GitHub Copilot, and you're going to join the event like so. You can join the Discord, but when you join as a builder, you're going to be presented with this interface where all of the tools are present, and you can select different resources. So for example, the GitHub Copilot resource, which Dave and Christopher will talk about, is also available here. Okay, going back to this, what does engineering notebooks and iteration loops have to do with anything? At the top of the day, at the top of like any prompt, you want to have a very clear idea of what you want to achieve. And the more concise you can communicate that idea to yourself, the better you can communicate it to the language model, and the better that the code generation output that GitHub Copilot is going to produce for you is going to be. So at a high level, you want to understand what your problem is. You want to figure out a high-level approach and give the language model some idea of how you want to approach the problem. If you're doing like an e-commerce site, how are you going to store the products? How are you going to store purchases? Being able to communicate this to the language model helps you guide the language model more concisely. And then the implementation comes downstream for you to iterate on it and to review. So we want to basically capture this thinking as iteration loops in the notebook. And you can do that through Hacker Squad. So right here, we're going to build, this is an example of one engineering iteration cycle that I added. I want to build an auth system. The auth system allows us to track purchases down to a user. And I might be running into, and let's say I got to the implementation. I got so far into adding products into the database, and then when users click buy, they are added to a purchase or sale list that has a many-to-many mapping to products and tabulates the password. Okay, oh, thank you. And tabulates not the password, but the total purchase price. Thank you very much, Dave. The purchase, oh, this is way better. Nice, okay. Tabulates the purchase price. And then send them to Stripe. This is an implementation as opposed to any of the other ones. So let's say, yes, this is get committed. And this adds it to your engineering notebook as an iteration loop. We want to track as many of these iteration loops as possible. We're going to give raffle prizes away to the person with like the most concise iteration loops. and that's going to be distributed through prizes. We don't have all the prizes added here yet, but I probably will have them added in here once I get back up on stage. At the end, when we finish the day, you'll have a large engineering notebook with lots of iteration cycles and lots to look back on to see your progress throughout the day. And hopefully the project that you demo tomorrow night back here at the GitHub office will reflect some of the progress that you made. We're going to do 2 sets of prizes for this, and some of it will go middle of day raffle, and the other half of it, or the other portion of it, will go in the end of day tomorrow. Okay, just to close up for my side, you're going to get direct access to tools, also direct access to lots of great VCs in the Pacific Northwest. And in part of today, it's part of our Microsoft Research study, which we're going to actually talk a little bit about. Kevin is going to give you more details about what that looks like. But just as a high-level overview, this is the event. Ignore team creation here. We're going to be doing these as individuals. And at the end, we're going to do community judging that's going to close off by 9, but we'll open up when we do project submissions at 6. There is also a project submission raffle. Do I have that here? No, I don't have that yet. But we will be giving away $50 just for submission raffles at 6 o'clock. And then tomorrow when we do the demos, we'll select the top 10 from there, 6 to 10 projects, and that top 6 to 10 projects will pitch to a group of investors, including Kevin Crosby from the GitHub Funded Accelerator, who you're going to hear from in just a moment, Kevin Leanaway from Pioneer Square Labs, John Turow from Madrona, Yohei from Untapped, and Angie Parker from A of A. Okay, so this is a Microsoft Research study. You're going to learn a bit more about what this looks like from Way. Well, I'm going to kick off the stage here and bring out Kevin. Everyone please welcome Kevin. Oh, actually, I'm so sorry. Before everyone welcomes Kevin, who parked downstairs today? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Can you guys come talk to me at the end? We figured out parking. I communicated over the Discord that, I think your hand too. Yeah, come talk to me at the end of today or at some point today. Just make sure I write your name down. We'll make sure parking is covered. You guys don't have to worry about it. Cool. Yeah, everyone, please welcome Kevin to the stage.
Presenting Bellevue. We're excited to have everyone join us. Is that the microphone?
No, this one. Oh, yeah. We'll use this guy. This is out loud.
Okay. Sounds good. We're super excited to have everyone here. Part of today is really kind of leaning into some experimentation we're doing with Microsoft Research around how Copilot accelerates development. So just brief background. So I've been with GitHub for a little over 2 years. I lead our funding programs here, which include things like GitHub sponsors, which I'm sure many of you have used as a way to find funding for your open source development. The accelerator, the GitHub Secure Fund, which is a funding platform for helping developers secure their open source projects, and then our GitHub Fund, which is a venture vehicle. So kind of span the gamut of helping developers be successful in the open source ecosystem. One of the areas I'm super excited about is how do we use open source technology to also accelerate development, which is part of why I'm excited to see GraphRAG and NLWeb in this hackathon. Part of this experience for all of you is just to get hands-on with these tools, but also just to build a community around building with these, the technology, the community that we have in Seattle. And as part of that, we're also bringing in the investor community, which is what you'll meet with tomorrow. So that's just kind of the broad overview of what we're thinking through. As a high level for Copilot today, and you'll hear more from Dave and Christopher shortly, but the capabilities that we have for Copilot are designed to help you accelerate development, take ideas to product faster, and it's an opportunity for you guys to just get some hands-on experience with different flavors of Copilot today. So with overall just the details that we're talking about, if you have any questions around the Copilot experience, ways to utilize GitHub throughout this, we'll have Christopher and Dave over at the side over here. And then if you have any questions around our other GitHub programs, including open source maintaining of projects, how to manage them, different funding programs, feel free to come find me after or during the event as well. So thank you.
Kevin, and now I'm going to introduce Wei to the stage to talk a little bit about their Microsoft Research study. Please welcome Wei.
Hi, good morning everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Shanu. You can call me Wei. I lead the program management team at Microsoft Research in our Redmond lab. And I'm here to talk to you about our hackathon experiment because when you signed up, there was something that you consented to. And I will walk you through a little bit about the why, the how, and I'll be around if you have any privacy or any concerns that you want to talk about as well. But first, so why are we even running an experiment? Okay, so this guy, once upon a time, about last year, said that he and his tech CEO buddies in Silicon Valley believe that there will be a one-person billion-dollar company sometime before 2030, I believe. And clearly he also thinks that his company is the one that's going to make all the AI models that's going to help us get there. This guy, Mark Cuban, also said something not too long ago that he believes that AI and agents are going to create a trillionaire. And it'll be a dude or a dudette. And in fact, there's a community right now that's actually looking at who and tracking the top lean AI companies. And there's a whole leaderboard. I think it's leanai-dashboard, right, Kevin.com. So you can also come and look at this because it gets updated pretty routinely, and it looks at which companies are usually, I think, around. He's even got a number of employees up to 110, but let's just say smallish startup-sized companies. What is your annual revenue? What is your revenue? It's just tracking who's gonna be there first, right? Base 44 is like the only one-person company that's on there so far. So then the question is that trillionaire? Is that one person, $1 billion unicorn creator you in this room today? Well, let's find out. But first, we need your help. So this leads us to our experiment here from Microsoft Research, which is, can agents help entrepreneurs create the next unicorn? And how can we measure this? How do we know for sure that this is possible? And that is why hopefully you clicked on the PDF when you were registering. This is a screenshot of the consent form that indicates that by participating, you are participating in the study. We are not collecting your name. We don't know anything about you. This is all going to be anonymous, but that is why you've been filling out a bunch of surveys. For example, we'll move on to the next slide. There we go. So this is why when you first registered, there was a survey that you may have filled out, right? If you haven't filled it out, please find me later or scan this QR code. I don't know because it's anonymous. So you may have put a GitHub handle in. So I can look it up for you. You have to come talk to me later. And then when you came in, my wonderful colleague Graham and Maroon may have also hijacked you right when you came in and said, please fill out the survey. Or you scanned a QR code from me to fill out the survey. We also please need you to fill out the survey before you start hacking. And the goal of that is so that we can understand where you are at the start of your journey during this hackathon. And there will also be a survey later on towards the end of the evening where we will also understand, you can think through kind of where you landed in your journey through the hackathon as well. And so by filling out the surveys, by the way, by registering, I don't know if you all read the fine print here, so I'm telling it to you right now. You've all been randomly sorted into either having access to GitHub Copilot Free or GitHub Copilot Enterprise. And so what that means is some of you will have access to a full gamut of things, including all these sorts of wonderful agent modes that I think Kevin's still working on over here, thank you. And free will have a different set of capabilities because that really helps us understand, for those of you who really are gonna use the agents to their full capability, are you going to do so? And we're a little bit curious if you are. But then you're like, wait, hold on, that doesn't seem fair, right? Because there's some people that are gonna have all these agent things and then the rest of us don't have these agent things. who are in the GitHub Copilot free version, you will have your own track of hacking through using GitHub Copilot free. You'll have round 1 judging, which is today. We'll announce the top 5-ish from that track. I think later on today or tomorrow. Today? Today. Then you'll go into round 2 judging, which is tomorrow. And then clearly you will all, whoever you are, I hope, make ton of money off of this. Same thing for my GitHub Copilot Enterprise friends. You go through the exact same track, but you're being judged and evaluated against folks who are also have access to Enterprise. So this is our way to ensure fairness. Any questions, please also feel free to come chat with me about that. One big ask from us, because this is an experiment, please stay on your designated track. I can't stop you from cheating. I can't stop you from using other tools, but I'm basically begging you with this cat, who you will make very sad if you use other tools, because we really want to understand here what is the efficacy of agents in enabling you to be that next trillionaire.
Other tools? Can you give examples? Like, what do you mean by other tools?
Is it cheating if I tell them? let's say you have access to Cursor, right? You choose to use Cursor, you choose to use Windsor, you choose to use something else. You just straight up go into Claude because you pay for Claude access, right? That's kind of going outside of the experimental parameters. Again, I cannot make you, but I'm gonna go back to Sad Kitty. Nobody wants to make the kitty. Okay, so please, you don't need to take this screenshot now. I'm just letting you know that there will be, when we're all done around 6 o'clock or so, there will be an end of day survey, and then you're done for surveys for the rest of this time. So please, your participation in survey completion will help us further the study of entrepreneurism and agents. We will not store your data longer than basically what you say, which is completely anonymized. We will not be tracking your GitHub handles. So anything that you've told me today, I have no idea who you are. But our hope is that you, this will be you, Scrooge McDuck, skiing on your giant piles of billionaire, trillionaire money because you participated in this hackathon. All right, thank you.
Hello, my name is Nathan. I am an engineer at Microsoft Research. And I guess I get to kick off kind of a few talks about some of the tools you have available to you today. So I'm going to talk about one called GraphRAG. As you can guess from the name, this uses graphs, like graph data structures, to perform RAG, retrieval augmented generation. And I'll get into all that, how it works, and how you can use it. So this visualization you can see here, this is a graph that was extracted from a collection of episode transcripts from Behind the Tech podcast, which is hosted by Kevin Scott, Microsoft CTO. And so I'm going to talk a little bit how this was made by an LLM as part of GraphRAG and how it can then be used to do summarization of your data. So first off, what is RAG? If you're not familiar with it, it stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. The basic idea is an LLM doesn't know anything about your data. It only knows what's in the training set, right? And maybe it's your business documents, your personal writings, or maybe it's even like news articles you're interested in that came out after the training finished for the current model you use, right? So there's a whole kind of, RAG is an umbrella term for a collection of techniques that allow you to find the right information to put into the context window for the model, which is the text you're gonna send to it. And then you're gonna say, okay, please answer these questions. However, there are some limitations. As I said, the LLM can't tell you anything about data that it hasn't seen yet. And most models have limitations in that window, that context window, for how much information you can give it at a time. You can't just give it your entire repository of data. It's gonna be too big. Either it's too big for the context window, or oftentimes, some models have very large context windows, but they exhibit this behavior pattern where they forget what's in the middle, right? They'll remember the first bit they see and they forget the end. And so RAG is it's a lot of different ways of thinking about how we can find and organize that information to try to give it the best possible thing to summarize for us. this is what RAG typically looks like. It's a little bit maybe hard to read in the back, but on the far left, you've got some data, and you will chunk it up into small pieces. You will embed it, so you will put it into statistical, like a mathematical space. And then when it's time for your query, when you have a question for the model, you will actually have your query embedded so it fits into that same query space, or that same statistical space, and it will then be able to find relevant text to your query. That way you've got some optimal content to give to the model to summarize, right? So at the very bottom here, we end up with this prompt. So I've asked the question, what did Ashley Lorenz discuss in the podcast? And I might say, please use this relevant information I retrieved, and I will give it, let's say, 24 text chunks that I got from my RAG system, right? So that's fundamentally how RAG works, and it works pretty well. Here's a question I asked with kind of a standard off-the-shelf RAG technique. The question is, what did Kevin Scott discuss with Ashley Lorenz? And it did a really good job pulling back the episode content when Ashley Lorenz was interviewed on the podcast. And it has a good summary of some of the things they talked about. Ashley, he's our director of outreach for MSR. His background was as a hip hop musician, and then he transitioned to academia. It's all in here, summarized really well. So RAG works great, but the fundamental issue is that it relies upon the answer looking like the question. In other words, when you are asking that query, the text needs to be able to match in that mathematical space. So that's, oh, where did that go? Oh. So when I ask a query like, what did Kevin Scott discuss with Ashley Lorenz, I've used their names a bunch, right? I've name dropped them, and so those are little keys for the statistical space to pull back good relevant content. But what if I asked a question like, what are the major themes that were discussed? Or who were the most influential guest speakers who discussed AI? So a lot of RAG techniques kind of fall over when you ask these general questions, because you're not gonna have text that it's gonna match on that has those kind of general things. So that's where we get to GraphRAG. That's why we built GraphRAG. We said, okay, we think that a graph data structure might be a way of organizing information so that we can give the model a little bit better cue or a bit better hint of what we're looking for. So here's another question I asked. On the left, it is a basic RAG answer. On the right is a GraphRAG global search answer. The question was, who talked about MIT in the podcast? So it's a little more vague. It does use MIT, but that's a fairly weak signal compared to all of the specific names of people we talked about. And the answer on the left, I apologize that you can't read it probably from back there, but it's a pretty short answer. Basically, it looks like a Cop 1 episode. The GraphRAG global search lists out about, I'd say, 8 different people who either maybe they got their PhD at MIT or they currently work there. You know, somebody here works in the media lab. And so it did a really good job of giving us this answer to a very much broader question. So we'll talk about how to do it, or how this works and why. First off, what is a knowledge graph? It's basically a collection of entities and relationships between them. And when those relationships are strong, they form communities. So when you and I talk, we form a relationship, right? We work together, or if we, whatever interactions we have, we're building relationships. Obviously, that's what social media is built on. And so we think that would work well. I say, we had the idea that that would work really well for answering questions about humans, because humans operate as graphs a lot, right? We operate in networks. And so we started building GraphRAG and did a lot of testing and found there are, in fact, a lot of question types where it does work a lot better. So the basic premise is that the graph forms a sort of working memory for the LLM, and we can pick parts of it to give to the LLM to summarize based on these questions we have. So I'll talk a little bit about how that's done. First off, just kind of an example, back to that original screenshot from the front, that's the graph of the Behind the Tech podcast. And here's a zoom in, you can see some examples of the entities that it found. These are people, places, even concepts, like X-ray crystal structure, things that people talked about that you would think of as an important idea, and they're all linked together. The color coded in here is the communities we've derived from graph machine learning. So this is what a pipeline looks like for GraphRAG. I will not go into every bit of detail, but the basic premise is, just like in regular RAG, we split up your text. We then give that text to the language model and say, tell me what's in this. Who are the people in this? What are the entities? And what is the relationship that they have? We do this across all your text and then combine it into one big graph. Then we provide some machine learning over it, and we derive these communities, which you can kind of see down in the lower right. We've color-coded to show. We build a hierarchical structure of communities, which we can then use on our answer. So here's the methods available to you in GraphRAG. First, to index, you need to get this graph in the first place, right? So the default indexing, as I said, it uses the language model to do this extraction. This gives you really great high-fidelity real-world entities. So let's say you're building UX where you want to be able to find and navigate people, great for that. The downside is that is using the LLM for every single one of those calls, and so it's a little bit more expensive. There's another one we call fast GraphRAG, and this uses NLP techniques for the basic graph extraction. So it's just pulling out noun phrases, etc. And what we found is that that actually creates a much noisier graph, but once we do our graph machine learning over it, it's still a fantastic graph for doing sort of these global, holistic questions. So as you're thinking about which technique you might want to use, it's kind of depend on the UX you want to build, the experience you want to build, etc. We have three essential query types that are built into GraphRAG. First is basic. This is just like standard semantic search, like I described at the very beginning. Chunk up all your text, embed it into vector space. When you do queries, if your query looks like the text, like you're asking about a specific news event, you're going to get back good results. We have another one called local search. What this does is it uses the entities from your graph. It finds them from your query using semantic search. It then goes into the graph and finds the communities that those entities are found within, and then it can summarize those. So it's a little bit more specific. It's a little bit better if you're asking about specific people, places, things, etc. And then the final search method we call global search. This one, it's a little bit more involved, but what it does is, I said we made those communities earlier. We actually asked the LLM to summarize each of those communities. So a good example would be if you have a corpus of news, you might have a community that's like tech news, sports news, etc. Those are very natural subdivisions that would come out. And the LLM has summarized those into reports for us as part of the indexing process. So if I have a global question, like a very broad question that's not going to match well with semantic search, what I'll do is actually map reduce over those communities. I'll ask that question of every community. I'll get an answer, and then I'll ask the LLM to combine them into one final answer. And that's why it works really, really well at these broad questions that are kind of maybe non-specific, where you're not naming a person, but you have some, what are the themes kinds of questions. Okay, how do you get it? Hopefully you can read that, but I'll read it off to you. The docs, we have a getting started tutorial, 5 minutes, aka.ms/GraphRAG-start. And that'll actually, pip install GraphRAG. It'll index an open source book from Project Gutenberg, and you should have GraphRAG index that you can query within 5 minutes. And then we've got the links to the open source repo, and we've got another AMS link, just /GraphRAG, which has a blog posts and academic papers, etc. Yes, yeah.
What's the difference for using this versus say Neo4j or something?
That's a kind of, I got a good answer for you on that. You can use Neo4j. You can connect to it with Neo4j. Well, lots of answer maybe I don't have time for, but yeah, you could use Neo4j as your graph. In fact, we've got some examples of people doing that. That's it. That's my last slide.
Yeah, do you want to take a couple questions?
A couple questions, sure.
Do we have to use our own model APIs or?
I think that will be explained a little bit later. Yeah, how you can get access to some inference models. Okay.
The last line, is that it? The fourth character from very end, is that a typo?
Yes.
Oh, did I?
GraphRAG.
I did, yes, I'm sorry, that's a typo. aka.ms/GraphRAG. No second G in there.
I just want to ask a clarifying question. So like if we, I'm looking at the documentation here, it says get a copy of A Christmas Carol by Lewis. So GraphRAG will automatically subdivide and chunk everything, right? I don't have to pre-process the data, it'll just kind of do it all, right?
Correct. Yep.
And are there any if I do want to do some pre-processing, to just make it a little easier for GraphRAG, because it says it might take a while to
Sure.
do. How would I effectively pre-process? How would I chunk it?
Yeah, well, that's another one I could probably, I could combine, I'll be around and answer that a little bit. But yes, you could absolutely, you can pre-process, you can do any step of the GraphRAG pipeline yourself if you want, including parsing input documents, whatever, and then just give it the starting content. One of the common things people like to do, and we now support this in GraphRAG. So if you imagine, if you chunk up a document, you might have a lot of front matter at the top, which then your secondary chunks wouldn't get. You need to chunk them in order to get these nicer semantic matches, and for if your context windows are very large, you might not even be able to fit a whole document. So we can actually prepend metadata to every chunk. So there's some pre-processing already built in that you might even want to do that it just takes a little bit of config.
text citation?
No. Nope, just Python.
All right,
Cool.
everyone give it up.
Thank you.
Conversational protocol. So you can take this and add this to your website, it's a list of things. You could add it to search across agents. Basically, it works across agents, or excuse me, it works across lists of things. So I'm just going to show you kind of how to set this up. Basically, I recommend going and starting. You can kind of read through here, but I would just go and start from our docs folder. So sorry, this is. And I would start with our hello world. Find it. And what it's going to show, it's just going to walk you through setting everything up. We have a new thing in here, and that's where I kind of want to show you. We actually have the Behind the Tech podcast in here is one of our demos too, but we don't use the transcript, so it's just searching across like the list of things from an RSS feed. The gentleman who created this also created schema.org, and so if you're using a website, over 50% of websites actually use schema.org, and so it's really easy to use NLWeb to search across all of the data in a website because LLMs just understand it. So essentially, what I want you to do, instead of using app file, we have a new thing that's app and then AIO HTTP, so it's the new search server, and it fixes some bugs and performance issues. So this is brand new and we're just rolling it out, and I wanted you to have it today. There's a couple of other new things that aren't documented yet that I wanted you to have. There's something called who server, so that's like, who can I go and ask for something? And I'll show you some of this in a second. I actually have a demo, but I wanted to just take you into like how to navigate this a little bit. So I'm just going to show you, this is a demo that I have on my laptop. I'm going to start something new. Actually, sorry, I don't have this running. One second. Let's use this. So this is a site that we have running. You guys can try this out if you want to. It's nlw.azurewebsites.net. And it'll kind of show you what things are happening. And I'll just show you kind of here, you can add a new conversation. It'll show your conversation history on the side. And some of the sites we have in here, you can just see we've got some things here that you can search across. And you can also say something like, it's a good thing we can search for. We often search for snacks because we like to eat. Let me go with something here. So you can see it's going to these many different sites that we have, and it'll show you different things. This is just scraped content that we have. There's some files in there that can help you with that if you have a website, and I can show you those as well. Many people look at this and they're like, oh, it's just search, but it's actually not just search. You can keep having your conversation say, this is again one of my colleagues who wrote this. So we're going to filter it a little bit. It's for a Diwali party. The LLMs know what Diwali is, and so it'll actually bring in some knowledge, and it'll filter things and bring in things that are maybe a little bit more appropriate for such a thing. So that's generally how it works, but then you can go and you can start new conversations if you want. And so you can see now, it's bringing in other places you can go and look. This is kind of cool because, it's broken, darn it. What it's gonna do is it's gonna link you to a Shopify site. I'm very sorry, we have a couple of ones right now. But essentially what we're doing here is we're actually calling an MCP server. So when we get this fixed, what it does is it calls the MCP servers and it brings a list of who you can ask. So it's not just having a conversation, it's actually a new search mechanism to search across MCP endpoints, and it could be also agent endpoints. So if we had another NL web server set up, we could also call into that. The basic idea within a web is you don't have to know like a set of tools. With MCP, it's a little different. You have to know a set of tools, right? They've got some things they're trying to do for tool calling. But imagine you have thousands of sites or millions of sites, and then you have hundreds of tools. LLMs gets very confused with tool calling. And so if you just need to know what can I ask in natural language and then a web server takes control, then it's a little bit easier on that side. So that's the idea. This is very new. It's been out for less than 6 months, so we're still building it. We've got a hefty 2 people working on it and some more people coming on board. We've got some new folk. We've got one new folks in the back, so he's getting set up and going. But we're here around to help. But yeah, like you can use this in your application. You can use it on websites. And let me show you the other thing I mentioned to you. If you go up, everything kind of lives in. Wish I could see this better. So basically, all of the code kind of lives in this core Python folder, this code Python folder. If you go into the scraping folder, if you need to like pull in information, you can go and try to use that. Apologize, I can't see anything. Yeah, I learned. Nice.
Nice website.
Oh, that's way better. Oh, thank you so much. I obviously don't hear very often. Okay, cool. So basically, you go into the scraping folder. There's some documentation at the top of the Python file. It's called incremental call and load. It will tell you how to use this. It's pretty simple. Pretty much everything you run from the Python folder. That's documented in the Hello portal. There's a bunch of things to kind of like know also. So when you're going through, and I know you're getting information about your API keys and things like that, you can go into this config folder, and that has all of the different things you will need. You'll set up your environment with your API keys, but then like if you want to actually change your embedding model, so we're by default Azure OpenAI, so you can be able to use that. Your retrieval provider, we just use Quadrant Local, so it'll set it all up for you if you want to scrape something, and that'll be the database you can use. You could configure it to use like Azure AI Search is a great option, Elastic works. It doesn't work yet on Weaviate, but we hope it will soon. And then we have your actual LLM providers here. Again, it's Azure OpenAI by default, but if you have like an OpenAI key, that's great. One thing to know about when you set up your API key for your LLM, it's really good to turn it up really high, because what we're going to do is shoot out a bunch of very small LLM calls. And what that's doing is actually parsing the call at the same time we're calling the database, and that's how it pulls back results. If you're interested in the pattern for kind of how the search works, we have another file in our docs. It's called Life of a Query. And this one is pretty helpful in understanding kind of what's going on here in covers. Okay, so you can kind of see this is our search pattern here. And so this is actually a lot of queries. This is like, could be like 50 different LLM calls. And just the pattern that we're using is actually pulling back real things, so at least you'll know that it's not hallucinating, it's pulling them from a vector database and just using this to kind of figure out like which is relevant to this query. That's kind of it. It's new. We'd love for you to try it out. We'd love for you to submit bugs if you have them. And if you have any feedback, we'd love that too. I'm happy to take questions. I apologize, this was a little random because we were doing a release this morning so that you guys could have some new toys. So.
Give it up. In any event, hi, I'm Christopher Harrison, Senior Enterprise Advocate, focused primarily on developer experience, or as the cool kids call it, DevX, and in particular this little thing called GitHub Copilot. Dave Bernison, sitting right over there, compatriot, and same title, and focused in on basically everything else that we do. I think is sort of the easiest way to describe it. I'm going to get right on into it and talk through how to get the most out of GitHub Copilot and talk about what's going to be available to you. So let's actually do that part first, which I have on a page over here. So for those of you that will have access to Copilot Enterprise versus Copilot Free, the basic core breakdown is going to come around to the number of premium requests that you get in a given month. You'll notice for Copilot Free that's going to be 50, for Enterprise that's going to be 1,000. If you do go beyond that, you can pay for that as you so desire. You can upgrade. But I do want to highlight that both GPT 4.1, and this is actually brand new, like literally days old, GPT 5 Mini, you get unlimited for free. The other real big thing that you'll have access to with Enterprise as opposed to free is you will have access to Copilot Coding Agent. Now, I need to take a moment here and define a couple of real quick terms because they're not necessarily as clear as they could be. We have Copilot Coding Agent and Copilot Agent Mode. Copilot Agent Mode, both free and Enterprise, will have access to, and that's going to be available right here inside of your Copilot window, inside of, say, VS Code, Visual Studio, or fill in IDE of choice here. So you hit that drop down, you choose Agent, yeah, it is showing up pretty well. And then you'll also notice that I can choose the model as well. I personally use Claude Sonnet 4. That is in no way, shape, or form an endorsement of that particular model. It's just the one that I happen to like and I feel like gives me the best results. So that is agent mode. Coding agent is going to be different. Coding agent can be thought of far more as a peer member of your team. Coding agent, again, is only going to be available on Enterprise. And with Coding Agent, what I can do is I can assign an issue to Copilot and let Copilot get to work in the background on that. So if we take a look at this pull request, so I actually assigned an issue, it created this pull request, we can actually see Copilot there. And if I scroll on down, all of this was generated by Copilot. So when you assign an issue to Copilot, it will automatically create a branch, it will automatically create a pull request, and then it will utilize that pull request to let you know what it's doing. And then finally, once it's done, it will give you a full summary of everything that has been done. And I can open this up inside of a brand new tab. This is the original issue, and you'll notice that I assigned it to Copilot, just like I could have assigned it to any other team member that I might have wanted. If I keep on scrolling down here, I can also see how this is doing its thing behind the scenes. So this will show me the full history of everything that it did. You are going to notice the duration here. It took 38 minutes to do its work. The whole goal of Coding Agent is to work asynchronously. So it's going to take its time. It's going to explore. So 30 minutes is about a rough average of how long something will take when you assign it to Coding Agent. Again, it's built to be asynchronous. If you want something synchronous, if you want something that you can quickly interrupt and reroute and point in the right direction, that's going to be where agent mode comes into play. So that's going to be the distinction between them. The last thing I want to highlight real quick, if you're not already familiar with this concept of agents, is that agents allow you to go beyond strictly code generation. So they're able to perform tasks on your behalf. So they can, for example, run unit tests, and then read the results of those unit tests, realize that they made a mistake just like we all do,
and then go back and fix that mistake to make the appropriate updates. So it can perform tasks and even be self-healing. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment and help you get the most out of GitHub Copilot, and in particular, highlight the fact that context is key. I always like this analogy, that my partner and I woke up the other day, and she says to me, hey, let's go to brunch. Fantastic. Who doesn't love brunch? And so I recommended a spot nearby. And she says, you know, we've been there an awful lot lately, kind of burnt out, thinking something else. Okay. And then I made another recommendation. And then she says, you know, really kind of craving waffles. All right, cool. And so I recommended another spot, and off we went. Now, that back and forth is very normal. Because here's what happened, is a question was asked, let's go to brunch. And based on the context that I had, I gave a perfectly normal answer, but it wasn't the one that she was hoping for. So then she provides some additional context, and then I updated my answer, and then she provides some additional context, and I updated my answer one more time. LLMs and generative AI work the exact same way. The quality of suggestion that you're going to get is directly driven by the context that it has. One of the big things that you can do to help drive context and also help give it more power is by adding in those MCP model context protocol servers to utilize RAG. And then also, particular to Copilot, is you can add in instructions files as well. So if I open up my .github folder, let's zoom way too far in, you'll notice that I've got, first of all, a generic Copilot-instructions file. And inside of here, I've given it an overview of what it is, how I'm building it, the tools that I'm using to build it, and any other project requirements that I might have. And if I dig in a little bit further, I've also got an instructions file, or an instructions folder with .instructions files. And these then get more specific. So for all of my Flask endpoints, I've got an instructions file for that. For all of my Playwright tests, I've got instructions files for that. For all my Python tests, I've got instructions files for that. So that way I can give it more specific information about what it is I'm trying to do, how it is that I'm trying to do it. The time that you invest in creating these types of files, into providing that type of context, is going to pay dividends. And one of the approaches that you might want to consider taking, which is actually something that I did over here, I'll show off this little project in just a moment, is I actually started with, let me scroll on down, a project requirements doc. So I'm a fantasy football dork, and so I just wanted to create a little application that would help me manage my fantasy football auction. So I created a real quick PRD, project requirements doc. And then I went to Copilot and I said, hey, this is what I'm doing. Go ahead and create an instructions file for me. And then I went in, I looked at that, I reviewed it, I made some updates, etc. And over the course of, I think this took me about like 2.5 hours, I then eventually wound up with this sort of beginnings of a website by just going in, giving it that PRD, having it create the instructions file, and then starting to iteratively build from there. Again, context is key. The more information that you can give it about what it is that you're building and how it is that you're building, the better it's going to be. Now, it does go beyond prompts, and it even goes beyond instructions files as well. That good code begets good code. You should be using good names. You should not be using single letter variable names. You can think of Copilot an awful lot like you would a new team member. Copilot isn't learning from you, but rather when you make a request, this is a bit of an oversimplification, but it's sort of starting over again. That it's having to go back through and see what's there. And if we think about a new developer to a team who doesn't necessarily have that history with the project, and they're having to read through all sorts of like really arcane abbreviations and so forth, and they're gonna struggle, Copilot's gonna do the exact same thing. So make sure that you're using good names, spell all of those out, make your functionals functional, make sure that they do one thing and one thing only, and then finally, last but not least, is be consistent. That Copilot is going to follow along with what it is that you're doing. It's a great pattern matcher. So if it sees you doing something a particular way, it's gonna follow along with that pattern as well. Okay, now I'm actually gonna pause there, open this up to any couple of questions that people might have, then I'm gonna turn it over to Dave. Dave has a couple of resources that he's going to point out. You aren't gonna get away without coming up here to
Oh, yeah, no.
Yes.
Exactly.
Any questions? Yeah?
Are there like templates or best practices for the .github markdown files?
As a matter of fact, we have a blog post for that. Dave will share that out in a couple of moments. But basically, for the high level Copilot dash instructions file, keep that to like project level stuff. So like, here's my tech stack. Here's my core folders. Here's my core files. This is what I'm building. This is how I'm building it. And then you can start to get specific in your .instructions files. So I can create .instructions files then for my test files, for my endpoints, for the other odds and ends that you might be creating in there. Yeah?
There is support for these files only in the enterprise version?
Say that again?
Is the support for these instructions only in GitHub Copilot?
Oh, so the question is instructions files, is that only supported on fill in particular version? The answer is no, it's supported across the board. Instructions files are available regardless of the license level. Yeah?
The coding agent, does that run locally on your machine or can it run in the cloud?
Okay, so question is coding agent, does that run locally or does that run in the cloud? So again, naming things is hard. Agent mode is run locally inside of your IDE. Coding agent is run in the cloud. If we want to get a little more technical, it's specifically run utilizing GitHub Actions, but it is going to be run in the cloud. Yeah?
As a relatively non-technical founder, if I just feed Copilot my business plan, will it set up this scaffolding for me, or is there some level of some translation that's going to be required?
So the question is if I feed it my business plan, is Copilot going to be able to create an app based off of that? And the short answer to that question is no, but it's going to be able to accelerate that quite a bit. So if you have that idea, and sort of like I did in that real quick demo that I showed off, where I had that PRD, I fed it that, and then I started to build iteratively from there, that's absolutely an approach that you can take with Copilot. But you're still going to need to understand the code that it's building out, what it's doing behind the scenes, and so forth. So there isn't that magic, just real quick, snap your fingers, and voila, you have an entire project.
My sort of self-question is, if I was to throw my business plan at it, would it add context or would it add muddying context?
So the question is will it also add context, or will that context potentially be muddying? And the answer to both of those is yes. So it can add context, and in fact, I'm often surprised by how well Copilot will often kind of like take that next step. So it's not just about generating code, it is trained on LLMs. So as a result, it can go like one step further. The other type of dork, I'm a lot of types of dorks, but another type of dork that I am is I'm a flight sim dork. And so I wanted to create a little app to help me like manage checklists. And I was really surprised that Copilot, when I said, hey, I want one for like a Cessna 172, I wanted one for an Airbus, I wanted for a Boeing 737, that Copilot actually generated, I mean, it wasn't anywhere like truly close, but it was a lot closer to what I would have expected as far as the kind of initial checklists went. So it generated both like the code, but it also then generated some of that non-technical stuff as well that was particular to what it was that I was doing. So it can absolutely like add to that and maybe like point out other things that you might want to consider as you're building that out. But again, that's not its primary goal. So the quality that you're going to get is really going to vary based on that. All right, one more question. Yeah?
If you want to connect it to a database and have it memory set up, do you have something like a bus that connects it?
So the question is, if I have a database, can I then bring that into Copilot? And the answer is yeah. The easiest way that you could do that is by utilizing MCP, so put an MCP server in front of that. And then that way, Copilot can talk to the MCP server. The MCP server can then go get the appropriate data or go perform the actions and bring it out from there. That being said, if you have direct access to that database, maybe it's like on your system, maybe you're just using like SQLite as you're going in and doing your development. Copilot can actually go out and like read through that database and execute queries from there. When it's in agent mode, I'm often surprised at some of the things that agent mode is able to do. So if you are using like SQLite, you've got that, that CLI installed, it can actually go ahead and perform those operations directly. I even had one instance where Copilot agent mode even started pulling up the documentation and actually reading the docs. Weird concept to figure out what it was that it was supposed to do. So short answer is yes, you could, like at larger scale, I would really recommend putting an MCP server, but like for smaller scale, you could potentially just let agent mode do that directly. So yeah, both Dave and I are gonna be around, by the way, to answer questions, but I'm gonna let Dave come up and show off a couple of resources.
For today and for other hackathon type scenarios is to pull together a lot of the resources that talk about the things that Christopher was just talking about. Custom instructions, getting started with agent mode or coding agent. Christopher himself has put out a number of short videos on YouTube through our team. You can see they're just 4 or 5 minutes or so to give you tips and tricks for working with Copilot, coding agent, etc. And then also some really great blog posts and such. And if I open one of these up, the way we do our blogs these days, you can see that, okay, this one, 7 minutes to read for the average reader or whatever, but really great insights and tips on how to use Copilot to get the most out of it. So we have 5 tips for writing better custom instructions. Again, that's going to be key to really helping you get started. Some prompt engineering tips. You know, you don't want to just say, hey, Copilot, I need a function. Given inputs A, B, and C, I need a function to calculate X. You know, being more prescriptive and stuff. A guide to deciding what AI model to use in GitHub Copilot. And we talked about, you've got GPT-5, you've got Claude Sonnet, you've got Gemini, lots of different model choices now. Some of those use premium requests, some of those don't. So depending on whether you're using free or enterprise kind of a thing. More on prompt crafting. How to use GitHub Copilot on github.com. So we have, you know, GitHub Copilot runs in Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, JetBrains, Xcode, Eclipse, etc. But when you're using GitHub itself, when I create a pull request, I can assign that pull request to Copilot. Say, hey Copilot, you go do the initial code review on this. So it might come back, maybe it'll find simple syntactical things, or maybe it'll say, hey, you need to, if you want this code to be maintainable, maybe you need to break these functions up or whatever may be. And then also key documentation, going into the details of that model comparison. Great resources here on the custom instructions and everything. And in fact, just last week, we added this customization library. So numerous examples of different types of custom instructions. Christopher talked about having, you know, the general custom instructions, but then also prompt files for specific scenarios and that. So lots of great examples there. Another great thing there, vast resource, is the awesome GitHub Copilot custom instructions repo. That one I have here. So if there's like specific things that you're working on with your app, dive into the different prompts and different instructions, you know, the different scenarios and things. Architecture blueprint generator, ASP.NET, Azure cost optimization, etc., etc., etc. You can see there's a vast number of examples here and everything. All right, I think that's just about, well, no, there's more, but definitely encourage you to dive into this. So I will drop this link into Discord, but I will also bring this up here, so if you want to jump to that, and I'll bring up the well, you can see the URL at github.com/devrel/github-copilot-jumpstart is the repo where you will find these instructions. But yeah, I would say, the custom instructions, looking at what AI model to use, getting familiar with, I think especially for this scenario, agent mode, is going to be incredibly helpful for you here. Getting a good handle on those things up front will definitely pay off as you move forward today and tomorrow. All right. Questions, comments? All right, let's see. There we go. Okay, camera's down because I'm going to unplug here. All right, Adam, Kevin, what's next?
I'm up next.
Okay.
I want to talk, I realized at the beginning of this, I had not introduced myself, but I'm sure some of you have seen some of the emails that I've been sending out. So, I'm Adam, and I lead developer relations at Weaviate. If you want to connect with me, this is my LinkedIn. I'll spit this back up at the end of the presentation, but I'll give it a second for the cameras that are up here to catch this. Okay, cool. So again, the GitHub Wi-Fi is GitHub guest, the password is octocat11. I want to talk a little bit about Weaviate and search. So you've heard from Chelsea and Nate on a variety of different tools that are available today from GraphRAG and NLWeb. And NLWeb is powered by a whole slew of vector database options that you have in order to run the vector queries underneath NLWeb that you can deploy into your mobile apps, into your front-end mobile sites, or your digital services. Weaviate is a traditional vector search tool that powers tools like NLWeb and can be used to complement your GraphRAG queries as well. And so when we talk about search, there actually are some inherent problems with the traditional sense of what we use for search. And if you look at this query, why do airplanes fly? The result down on the bottom, why you should fly with expensive airplanes, actually satisfies this with a keyword search query. Keyword search being something like best match 25 or BM25. But this would fail the human query because this result actually does not answer why what we're curious about with respect to why airplanes actually fly. And so the solution to one of these problems is to leverage embedding models. Embedding models are effectively the layer of machine learning models that interact with your data to produce a set of numbers. These numbers are effectively an array of many, many dimensions, way more than we can visualize. Usually these are north of 300, all the way up to 3,000 dimensions wide. And what we can do with these embeddings is embed all of our data. And if we embed all of our data, chunks of text, unstructured text, or structured text as well, we can actually produce different embeddings that represent different texts. And these embeddings, or these arrays, vectors, represent the semantic meaning of what our text chunk means. And so we might have text chunks that are a marketing definition for a marketing explanation as to why expensive airplanes are the best, but we also might have physics explanations as to why airplanes can fly. And in vector space, these look quite different from one another. There are depending on the model you've chosen, which there are many you can choose from OpenAI, they have text embedding large and small, and yeah, those are the new ones. We also have some from Mistral, Cohere, Hugging Face, Gemini, and you can run a lot of open source models locally on Llama as well. But the key idea, because these arrays of numbers, these vectors, represent our text semantically, we can actually leverage this mathematical property of clustered vectors that sit together or point together in a similar direction, actually have similar semantic meaning to one another. And so when we have a query like, why do airplanes fly, that vector will have a closer mapping to the physics explanation, just due to the nature of how the machine learning model is going to embed the input text and then generate the output query vector. That query vector is mapped against all of the vectors you have in your vector database, and out comes the most similar answers. And you can tweak the results by weighting either more closely to a traditional vector search, or that towards a keyword search. With Weaviate, we actually provide an in-between called hybrid search that allows you to do a vector query and a keyword search at the same time, and you can weight the results more closely to keyword search or more closely to vector search, just depending on your data set, the data you're working with, and to that end, you can tune your queries well, especially if you understand the data that you have underneath. So I want to talk a little bit, just a rough idea about what this retrieval augmented generation pipeline looks like. At the beginning of the day, you have your data. It's probably not in a vector database. The first thing you need to do is ingest your data, put it into the vector database in such a way that it's queryable. And so ingesting private data or any data is step number one. It doesn't need to be private. This example shows private in the text. You pass it into an embedding model, which will generate the vectors for you, and then you store those vectors into Weaviate along with the original data. And so when you pass your queries into Weaviate, it can, one, find all of the similar vectors, and as a result, find similar answers to your query, but then you can pass it to a language model for retrieval for augmented generation, augmented being augmented with your input context. Okay, one of the cool things with Weaviate is the Weaviate query agent. We actually are simplifying the process by which you have to write high-quality queries. We realized one of the biggest pain points for our developers is actually writing good queries that map to the results they're looking for. And part of that is understanding what types of searches to do. Part of that is understanding if you have multiple searches you need to do and then aggregate results over the set of searches. And so we built the Weaviate query agent to resolve this. The idea is you pass in a query, we'll pass it to the query agent. The query agent knows how to create the query based on understanding of the collections that are downstream. Once we understand which collections to target, we can write the query specific to those collections, and then we can figure out if aggregations need to happen as well. This happens all underneath the hood. You don't have to do anything about it. Let's actually look at some code for what this looks like. Pip install Weaviate client agents. If you're just using Weaviate, it's pip install Weaviate -client. If you pip install Weaviate, you'll get the wrong package. One of our competitors owns it, and well, it is what it is. So Weaviate-client is our Python package, and if you want to use Weaviate agents, square brackets agents. From here, you'll initiate a connection to Weaviate Cloud. Weaviate Query Agent is only available on Cloud today, but you pass in a cluster URL and an API key, both of which are available once you create a cluster in the cloud, a free cluster in the cloud. We get the environment variables, make sure that we can actually read it from here. And then we can start creating collections. So here we're creating a collection called brands. Here we're creating a collection called e-commerce items, and you can see various different data points or attributes: collection, category, tags, subcategory, name, description, anything you'd expect with an e-commerce product. This is another collection for weather and for financial contracts. Of course, the ingestion step is where we actually embed our data. And so in this particular example, which I'll share the slides out in a second, you can actually load the data sets from these examples that are already built into our into the repo that we've got. And then we do these batch dynamic loads of the data into the different collections respectively. And literally from there, you can start using the query agent. We'll pass in the collections we care about. So we're instantiating a query agent, passing in e-commerce and brands collections. And you can start running very natural language queries that Weaviate will then find the best query to produce results for you. So here's a natural language query. I like the vintage clothes. Can you list me some options that are less than $2? And so this will do a final answer, which is already LLM processed. You can have the language model generate JSON or other formats that you want to surface to your application. But the cool thing about this is you can actually introspect the query and see that it's just a single query without any aggregations. You can also find the sources that were used in order to create the results. Here's another example. What about nice shoes? Same budget as before. This example just shows that we can pass in this context as a response into the query agent. You can also do things like, what is the name of the brand that lists the most shoes? And this is kind of interesting because it does an aggregation, not just a search. So this is aggregating results from the query. Does the brand Luminara have a parent brand or child brands, and what countries do they operate from? Also, what's the average price of the items from that company? And so this is probably the most complex type of query to write programmatically. So here's the query, here's the output. But what's really cool about this is that it's two consecutive searches, one from the brands collection, or they're both from the brands collection, One is looking for child brands of Luminara, and the other one is just looking for those in Luminara with a like operator. And then once we have those, we can actually aggregate the results. And actually, these are actually the queries themselves. Writing this is way worse than just writing this text. And the Weaviate query will handle all of this for you. So creating a Weaviate cluster is totally free. You can do it at console.weaviate.cloud. There are prizes today, which I'm going to go over in a second. It's free. Did I mention this? We have a 2-week free trial, and then you can move your data into another 2-week free trial, and you can keep doing this until I get fired for sayings. Okay, again, if you want to connect with me, here's my LinkedIn. I'm going to go over some prizes next, but that's it about Weaviate, and I'm really excited to see what you all build with it. Okay, no one really cares to connect with me. That's okay. I'm sorry, I saw you pull your phone up as I said that. If you want to go, feel free to. Yeah, I'll keep this up for 30 seconds.
Do we get extra points?
I can definitely take questions, please.
Do we get extra points if we use Weaviate?
Let me go over the prizes, but that's a great question. I'll say I am an informal judge, and I'm very biased. Yeah. Okay, so what do the prizes look like? Oh, and before I look at the prizes, because there's more important things than just prizes, I've noticed a few notebooks come in. That's awesome. Really, really love to see that. As you're starting to build, think about the iteration loops that you're building on, basically the features that you want to build, how you want to think about those problems, and then bring those prompts into GitHub Copilot shortly after. 6 o'clock, we're doing is the deadline for project submissions. We want to be reviewing projects between 6 and 9 p.m. So if you can get your project submissions in by 6, that would be fantastic. You can put your project here like this. This project is the winning project. Oh yeah, that would be because. Winning project, thanks for letting me know about that, by the way. This is the winning project. It uses Weaviate for vector search. And you can select the tools you use. I use all of these, for example. List out your email here, just for reference, Adam at Weaviate.io. And then if you have a Loom for your project, you can submit your Loom link here or in the GitHub remote if it's not public. If you want to be eligible for the prizes, you need to either have an open GitHub repo or a Loom submitted, one or the other. You can put the Loom in the GitHub link here. And if you want to demo something, click /flag request demo and submit this. Oh, here's my, okay, so submit a link to your Loom there. This will be the submission process at 6 o'clock latest. At 6 o'clock sharp, we're going to actually do a raffle on this. But we've heard the word feedback come in a couple times. As we're building with each and every one of the tools, one of the things we also want to do is think about how we're going to submit feedback in here for our understanding and for better understanding of these tools in perpetuity. So for example, one of the things I learned about Weaviate recently is Weaviate supports this it's a embedding server that sits next to the Weaviate cluster. And what this does is it makes it super easy to, sorry, this is not I don't type QWERTY, so this is very, very, throwing me off quite a bit. Easy to create vectors out of the box. I send in a JSON payload, and suddenly I get a vector in the database with my data. If you see bugs, that's great, submit the bugs. If you see product experiences, feature requests that you're looking for, you can submit those too. Rodents. Rodent. Oh my goodness. Apparently I'm not human enough for this. Okay, submit the feedback. This is going to be graded by a language model. You will get points in the leaderboard that will come up here. Oh hey, that's me, Way right here. Way is beating me in points. But we're going to give raffles away to feedback throughout the day. So if you're submitting feedback, if you're submitting feedback, you're naturally going to build up points, and we're going to be doing that. So also, right now there is a total of 7 points in total. there is a few prizes we should look at. One of them is best developer feedback. The collective score needs to be 250. If we all submitted one piece of feedback in this room, we'd probably have 300 points. So it's as simple as one piece of feedback per person. But honestly, you should use this as a way to track your understanding of the tools and your understanding over time. And that will show up in here with an LLM response in your feedback as well. Thanks for sharing your experience. Okay, what's next? NL Web doesn't support Weaviate currently. This is one of the prizes. We're issuing a $150 gift card for anyone who submits a PR, and merges it back into NL Web that uses Weaviate as the vector database. We'll submit this. As soon as it's merged in, we can distribute this prize. I already talked about best developer feedback. It's not about the highest score, by the way. So if you're top 5, chances are you can probably get this prize. We're gonna look for LLM generated text. We don't want to see LLM generated text in the feedback. We want to see your raw experience and why the tool was great or why the tool was garbage. Project submission raffle, that's 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock sharp, we're gonna come back here and we will do this on screen. What is this gonna look like? This is gonna look like view projects. There are 2 right now. I'm gonna click this button, this doesn't count. But basically the winning project will be submitted and Dan, are you here today, by the way? Oh, nice, thanks for submitting your project. At 6 o'clock, if you win this, you'll win the 50 bucks. Nice. So that's at 6. There's also discounted universe tickets that we're giving away for the project that includes a Loom. This is only available to this is available to both tracks, the GitHub Copilot free track and the GitHub Copilot enterprise track. There's a best use of Weaviate for anyone curious about like bonus points for using Weaviate. We do have a $100 gift card also to distribute as part of this. And so if you win the best use of Weaviate prize, you can potentially get the $100. It's not a raffle. This is, all you have to do is submit the project to be eligible. You don't need to demo it tomorrow. You must include a GitHub link or a Loom as part of your project submission. And then there's also GitHub Copilot Enterprise, 1 year free. GitHub Copilot Pro, not Enterprise. I'll change this in a second, thank you. GitHub Copilot Pro, and you'll get this for 1 year, and this is obviously going to the team, or the person who builds in the non-GitHub Copilot Enterprise track. Cool, all right. Is there anything else that I wanted to run over? I think that's it. Any questions?
Has to be Loom or any?
Whatever, as long as you can share a link. Google Drive, link to a screen studio video is fine too. QuickTime video player is fine as well. Does not need to be a Loom. Thanks for the question. Any others? Are we ready to hack? Oh, yes?
Does the Loom have to be like a demo?
Yeah. Yeah.
How does that work for like tomorrow? Like the people who demo tomorrow, are the ones that are like selected by the judges?
Yeah.
Or is it anyone?
Oh, so the top 10, oh yeah, great question. I actually did not talk about that. Good call. What's your name?
Oh,
Michael, you get bonus points. They don't count for anything. Okay, so yeah, at later this afternoon, there is going to be community judging. And the community judging is what we're going to use as a first layer to evaluate the top 10 projects. And what that's gonna look like, oh my goodness, that's not good, I wonder. What that's going to look like is, come on. I'll come back up there in a second. I know I'm in the wrong place. But the community judging is effectively everyone gets 15 points or some number of points. My laptop is lagging. But we're going to be able to cast your points to other projects based on descriptions. And then once we see the tabulated projects, we're going to select from that list and verify against others. So we'll take the top 6 to 10 projects from the community judged projects, and then those will go on to demo tomorrow. Yeah, that's going to be built into Hacker Squad. There's going to be a button here that says / community judging, and then you can see all the projects there. They're all anonymized, no names are going to be present, but then you can cast your votes, and you can cast multiple votes on one project as well. Yes?
Do all the projects start today, are the projects that start from scratch today, or if you've been working on some things because of the cost and just want that just so bad to that? Or is it started from
So I'm open to this, Kevin. This is a question that I think.
Oh, I think if you're working on a project and you're gonna keep building, that's totally fine. I mean, obviously the feature ads have to demonstrate.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what that's my same answer. So big emphasis on talking about like, make a note in your project description where you are today and what features you're adding, and then we want to see those reflect in the engineering notebook as well. Good question. Yes?
To confirm, we have to hack solo, right?
This is a solo hack. Yeah, these are solo hacks. Any others?
What if we started something on a completely different path? How do we migrate that?
What do you mean a completely different path?
Like if you get halfway, you can pivot or something?
Yeah, if you're more than welcome to pivot. It's just you'll have lost some time building in the morning. So think through what you want to demo and then work towards the demo as opposed to starting out building without knowing which direction you want to take it. Yeah.
So I have like my VS Code set up with Copilot, and so how's it gonna work switching over to enterprise or free trial?
Quick, Kevin.
So right now I'm provisioning everyone that is getting access to enterprise, access to what's called GitHub Hack Day의, and I'll give everyone that has been selected the enterprise access to that specifically. So you'll get an email, make sure you check your email. If you didn't get an email, didn't even get it in New York, and then if you didn't get the email, you'll just sign up for Copilot free and you're off to the races to start hacking. The only thing we were trying to confirm is if everyone pre-registered and signed the form, how to manage, make sure there's an even split of folks. So more details on that, we'll share.
Cool. Any other questions? Yes?
Remember you did have, like find a squad or something like that?
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Okay.
Sorry about that, thanks. All right, yes, one more.
Access to models.
Oh, yes, access to models.
Yep, so you could use the GitHub models, I guess you can just go to, I'll put up the URL, but you can use the models from that and find your GitHub models as well. You go to models.com, yeah, and then get started with the model APIs from here. And then it'll give you all the documentation. So if you have questions, feel free to stop by. But also if you use a provider already and you have a key for models, feel free to use that as well.
Cool, all right. I'm gonna set some music on, we're gonna get hacking, and we'll be around. We'll probably cast some raffles in a bit. And I'm stoked to see what you all do. Oh, actually, there's not enough. No, there's not enough. We'll do our first raffle in maybe 30 minutes. Okay, good luck, everyone.
One last question.
Yep.
I thought we were gonna know which tool we.
Yes, Kevin, you wanna,
Sorry, what was that?
which tool people are gonna get distributed?
I'm sending out emails now, so if you get an email, make sure you accept the GitHub Hack Day organization, provisioning access to the Copilot.
Want to grab mine?
Oh, yeah. Good. Thank you. For those that couldn't hear, there were some questions around where or whether you would get access to the enterprise or the free. As of right now, I am giving everyone emails that have been selected for the GitHub Hack Day organization. Check your email to see if you've gotten it. If you haven't gotten it yet, please hold tight. We should have all of that sorted out probably in the next 15 minutes, and I'll give everyone a final update. And then once you've gotten access to that organization, you will have access to Copilot. I just enabled the folks that have already been granted so far. Yes?
How do we switch like tools like VS Code to use that works Copilot versus that?
You actually, that's a great question.